Hello, I'm Jay Leeming, and thank you for listening to this podcast. If you are able to support this podcast by joining my Patreon community, please do so. That gives you access to bonus recordings, as well as to free performances of many of the great epics of the world, which I give periodically online. It also makes this podcast freely available for others. You can join that community at patreon.com/storyjl. Thanks very much. Hello, and welcome to the Crane Bag Podcast. I am Jay Leeming. Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to continue our exploration of the vast cycle of stories known to us as the Iliad. These are stories about 3,000 years old, and today we have come to it. The Greeks have sailed across the sea to meet the Trojans there on their home ground. What is going to happen? Well, our toes know, and the roots of our hair, perhaps, and the darkness between the stars at night knows. All we have to do is listen. Shall we begin? Let us begin. And so the Greek army set sail. Set sail from the harbor of Aulis on the eastern coast of Greece. 1,000 ships filled with soldiers who had left their villages, their families, their children, and their wives behind. For 3 days, they sailed over the crashing sea. And on the morning of the 4th day, out of the sea haze, they saw land. And at first, they thought they had made an error, had journeyed falsely across the realm of Poseidon. But then the mist drifted away, and they saw, glittering on a high hill, the magnificent city of Troy. A city larger than any in all of Greece. But as the boats drew closer, they saw, between the city of Troy and the shore, many sparkling lights, glimmers shining, and they looked, and they saw that Helios, the sun god, was shining down upon thousands of swords and spears and shields and bronze helmets. They saw that there was an immense army there to meet them. And seeing this, in their hearts they all remembered the words of Calchas the seer, who had said that the first Greek soldier to step on the Trojan shore would be the first to die. So he had prophesied, and those chill words filled their hearts. But the anger in Menelaus's heart was strong, and the anger of the goddesses Athena and Hera towards the city of Troy was strong as well. And the will of Zeus, and the decisions of the fates, and the desires of Gaia, Mother Earth herself, could not be changed. The sails were filled with wind. The boats hurtled towards the shore. But as they came close to that shore, the Trojans, seeing them, let out a great shout, a jeering roar that went high up to the sky. And hearing this, many of those Greek sailors dropped their sails, and the oarsmen began to paddle backwards, slowing their passage forwards. So for a moment the two armies were poised, facing each other, the one on shore, the one at sea. And arrows began to glance against the bows of the boats as the current brought those boats in. And then Hector, the son of Priam, hurled a spear further than anyone thought possible. And it glanced off the bow of the boat of Protesilaus and went sliding over the deck, so that soldiers had to leap out of the way. And seeing this, Protesilaus took hold of his shield and his spear, and he leapt from his boat into the shallow water with a great cry. And he ran straight for the shore, and he hurled his spear into the throng of Trojan soldiers, and he set his foot upon that shore. But even as he did so, a spear came whistling out of the crowd of warriors and struck him just below the left arm and went through the side of his chest into his heart. And he staggered back, and gagging on blood, he fell down onto the sandy beach. And Hector, the son of Priam, ran up to him and took hold of his spear and said, "This is my home, you thieving Greek!" And he pulled the spear out of Protesilaus' body, and his blood followed, and he died. And his spirit, grieving, went whimpering down to the world of death and shadows. And seeing this, all the Greek soldiers leapt from their boats and stormed the shore. And soon the air was filled with the cries of men, and the beach was strewn with the bodies of the fallen. And Achilles leapt from his boat as well, and he ran to the shore, but he chose a place where the Greeks were being driven back into the sea. And he looked, and he saw an immense man there, snow-white from head to toe, without a shield, with two swords, just plowing his way through the Greek soldiers. And Achilles ran up to him, and he took his spear in hand, and he said, "Whoever you are, warrior, know that it is I, Achilles of Phthia, who has slain you." And he hurled his spear through the air, and it struck this man square in the chest, but miraculously it simply bounced harmlessly off, leaving not a scratch on him. And the man gave a great laugh, and he said, "I don't care who you are, warrior. I don't care where you're from. For my name is Cygnus, Cygnus of Troy. My father is Poseidon, the god of the sea, and he has made me invulnerable to all weapons. Prepare yourself to die at my hands." And he ran straight for Achilles, but swift-footed Achilles dashed quickly away, and he came to where his spear lay in the ground. He picked it up, and once more he hurled it at Cygnus, and bam! It hit him square in the chest, and again it bounced off, leaving not a mark on his body. "Gah!" said Achilles, and Cygnus ran straight for him, and Achilles parried the blows of his swords with his shield, and then he dove down beneath Cygnus's body, scrambled beneath his feet, and ran through to the other side. And he leapt up, and with a running start he came straight at Cygnus, and he bashed the swords from his hands so they fell to the ground. And then he leapt upon Cygnus and tackled him, driving him down into the dirt. And Achilles took his shield, and he pressed it down on Cygnus's face, and Cygnus thrashed and flailed with his arms, struggling for breath, and still Achilles bore down, pressing down and down with that shield, as Cygnus began to struggle for breath, wheezing and rattling, and then at last his breath left him, and he died. And Achilles took hold of Cygnus's swords, and he stood up. And as he did so, all of the Trojan soldiers stepped back, and Achilles said, "Trojan warriors, know that I am Achilles of Phthia, and I am your death." And he gave a great cry as deep as the sea, and with those two swords blazing in his hands, he ran for them. And seeing this, seeing him coming for them, after killing Cygnus, the invulnerable man, the Trojan warriors began to run. And soon it was a rout. The Greeks pressed their advantage. Soon the entire Trojan army was running away from the beach. And they ran past the two great ancient oak trees, and through the river Scamander, and past the grave of the warrior queen from ancient times, and they came to the walls of Troy themselves, and the gates were thrown open, and the entire army came flowing like a river into the city of Troy, and the gates were closed behind them, shut tight, and the bolts were shot home. And the Greeks, giddy with victory, began to yell and shout and to kick at the walls of Troy, but soon stones, arrows, and spears began to rain down from above. So they turned, they backed away, and Agamemnon said, "Let us leave them here. Our work is done for this day. Let us return to the beach and make ourselves at home." So they all turned and walked back towards the shore. But as they approached the body of Cygnus, the snow-white man, they saw that it was quivering, twitching there as it lay in the sand. And they all grabbed hold of their swords, fearful that Cygnus might rise again and slay all of them. But as they watched, amazed, feathers began to sprout from his shoulders and his head and his legs, and his two arms became two great immense wings. And then with a great beat of those wings, Cygnus flew up into the sky, and his shadow passed over the Greek army as he flew over them. And he flew all the way to Troy, and then he circled that city 3 times, the city which had been his home. And then as a swan, Cygnus flew higher and higher straight up into the sky, as if called by a song sung by a god. And then there was a great flash of light in the sky. And for a moment, in the daytime sky, they saw a pattern of stars in the shape of a swan. For Zeus had transformed Cygnus into a constellation in the sky, so that that light might shine down and forever remind humans of his life. Marveling at this, the Greeks watched as the light of those stars faded away, drowned out by Helios in his chariot. And then they turned and went to the shore. And there they pulled their boats up onto the beach, and they set up their tents, thousands of tents, and they set up campfires. And as Helios, the sun god, drove his blazing chariot over the western edge of the sea, so that the sky was filled with a smashed harmony of orange, pink, and purple light, all the Greeks gathered on the shore, and there they burned the bodies of their companions who had died that day. And they sang the old sad songs, their beautiful words going up so that the gods heard them. And they poured offerings of red honey-hearted wine down into the ground. And they sang and sang until those fires went out. And then they gathered around campfires, and once again they praised the deathless gods, and gave thanks that they had lived through another day. And Agamemnon gathered with all the Greek kings in his tent, and there they discussed strategy. And Agamemnon said, "The turtle will not leave his shell. Troy is a magnificent and beautiful city. It is well defended. They will not come out of that city any more. They will stay in that city. Our task is to starve them out. We must cut off their lines of supply. For it is said that the Amazons, those women warriors who fight as well as men, the Amazons themselves are guarding their supply lines to the east. We must attack them and starve the city out." So Agamemnon spoke, and they all agreed. And Achilles, Patroclus, and all the Myrmidons, they gathered around fires as well. And they gave thanks to the deathless gods for the life and the breath in their bodies. And then they sang songs and told stories of their home of Phthia. And as those stories rang out into the air, the starlit night air, for a while it seemed as if they were home, sitting on that shore, with the forest close behind them. And after some time, Achilles walked away from the others, and down to the shore of the crashing sea. And as he walked there, the waves hissed as they died out in the sand, as they fell back into the sea. And the stars were bright and infinite in the sky above. And the sea went far out, merciless and eternal, to the edge of the world. And as he walked there, an osprey flew out of the darkness and landed on the beach behind him. And Achilles thought nothing of it. But a moment later he heard a voice. "My son," the voice said, "why are you here? Why have you come across the sea's broad back to throw yourself against the city of Troy? Why have you chosen to take the good gifts which Chiron the centaur has given you, gifts of skill and cunning, gifts of the sword and the spear, and spend those gifts here in this useless war against the city of Troy? If you'd stayed home, if you'd stayed in the deep-soiled land of Phthia, you would have had a long and comfortable life. But here, my son, I know your life will be short. If you stay here, committed to this useless conflict, then you shall die on the Trojan shore, and your body too will be given to the fire, like all those who have died on this day, like all those who you have sent to the underworld. My son, why have you chosen this?" And Achilles looked at his mother. He looked into her sea-blue eyes, and he said, "Mother, my father Peleus is a man of no account. No one knows his name. No one knows of the land of Phthia, out of which I came. But they shall some day. For I shall do glorious things here, glorious deeds that will be remembered for thousands of years. Bards will sing of these deeds in lands unknown to us. Yes, my life will be short, but that is the fate of every mortal. You, goddess that you are, you know what infinity is. You know what eternity is. But for us who live and die, who live out our lives like scraps of wind, all we know of eternity is action, the deeds of our hands and our voices. So I will live here. I will do glorious things, deeds which will be remembered for thousands of years. I will not be a grain of sand, mother. I will be a great name in this world. That is why I am here." "Oh, my son," said Thetis, "this is your choice, and I cannot change it. But know this, I will always care for you. I will always love you. And if ever you are in deep trouble, come to this shore and cry out, and I will hear, and I will come, and I will do all I can." So, weeping, Thetis slipped into the sea and swam away. And Achilles stood there for a long time, looking out at the sea, though his mother was no longer there. And the next morning Agamemnon was awoken by a shout, by many shouts, for watchmen at the edge of the Greek camp had seen the Trojan army streaming out of the city. They'd seen the dust rising from the stamping of the boots and of the horses' hooves. They had seen the glittering array of swords and shields and spears and bronze helmets and armor coming at them across the dusty field. So they shouted, and all the Greeks took up their swords and their spears and put on their armor and held on to their shields. And they got in their chariots, and they too streamed out unto the Trojan plain, towards the Trojan army. So once again the two armies faced each other, and the archers took their arrows and fitted them to their bows, and the spearmen lifted their spears up, holding them aloft, about to unleash death and destruction upon the other side. But just before this happened, a chariot went speeding away from the Trojan army, and came straight to where Agamemnon and Menelaus were standing. And in this chariot was Hector, the son of Priam. And he said, "Greetings to you, Agamemnon, king of far-famed Mycenae, land rich in gold. I am Hector, the son of Priam himself, the king of Troy. I have come to you with an offer of peace. May there be peace between our peoples, between the kingdoms of Troy and those of Greece. May there be harmony between us, and may this conflict be settled by the two who began it, by Paris and Menelaus. We propose that these two meet in single combat between the two armies. To the winner shall go Helen, the daughter of Zeus, and all the wealth of the house of Sparta, and to the loser, death. That is our proposal. What is your answer?" And Agamemnon turned to confer with Menelaus. But Menelaus did not need to ponder this. He simply said, "I accept." "Excellent," said Hector. "We will send for Priam, my father, and he will come, and we will swear an oath before both our armies and the deathless gods." So another chariot went back to the city of Troy to bring Priam there. And as that chariot sped away, Hector and Odysseus paced out a great circle between the two armies in the dusty field. And then Priam came in a chariot, and he stepped from that chariot and stood beside Agamemnon. And they both took wine and poured it down into the earth. And Priam said, "O you deathless gods, hear my words, hear our words on this day. I praise you, Zeus, Lord of the lightning. I praise you, Gaia, Mother Earth, bringer of life. I praise you, Invisible One, with a name secret to all, in your kingdom of shadows below the earth. Hear our words, see our actions on this day. For I swear that there shall be peace between my kingdom of Troy and the kingdoms of Greece. Let there be harmony between us. Let there be peace." And Agamemnon spoke as well, and he said, "Zeus, you cloud-gatherer and father of all the gods, I praise you, hear my words. Gaia, Mother Earth, bringer of life, I praise you as well. And you, captain of dark shadows, lord of all emptiness down in your realm below the ground, hear my words as well. For I, too, ask that there be peace between our peoples. May this struggle be settled by those who began it. May you, the deathless ones, speak through their actions on this day. I ask that there be peace. I swear that there shall be peace between our kingdoms. Let there be peace." And all the Greek army responded, "Let there be peace." And Priam cried out again, "Let there be peace." And all the Trojan soldiers cried out, "Let there be peace." And once again they poured the sweet, honey-hearted wine down into the earth. And then gratefully, with great relief, all of the soldiers sat down on the ground, and took off their helmets, and put down their swords and their shields, thankful that the war was over, and that soon they would return home. And then Paris and Menelaus stepped forward. Paris dressed in beautiful clothes, wearing a green cloak, holding a shield decorated with the image of a mother bear, holding a spear newly polished as bright as a star. And Menelaus stepped forward, and on his shield there was a great lion roaring, and his spear was not as well polished as that of Paris, but it was worn down by years of use. And the two of them looked each other in the eyes, Menelaus savoring the moment, a moment he had waited for years. And then they both walked towards Odysseus, who held a bronze helmet in his hands. And they each took off one of their rings and placed it in the helmet. And Odysseus shook that helmet until one of the rings leapt out and fell into the ground. And he picked that ring up and they all looked as he opened his hand. And Odysseus said, "This is Paris's ring, and so he shall have the first throw." And then Odysseus, Nestor, Hector, Agamemnon, and all the others backed away from that circle drawn in the dusty field. And Paris and Menelaus faced each other beneath the limitless and generous light of Helios, the sun god. That light shining in their eyes and in their beautiful, beautiful armor. And beneath their feet was Gaia herself, the mother of all life, watching and listening. And far down in the darkness was Hades, the kingdom of shadows. Hades preparing to welcome the souls of the dead. And around them circled all the merciless and invisible gods, all of them joyous to see the powers of the world unleashed in this particular way. All of them certain of what was to come, though still the fates prepared to weave unexpected patterns into the cloth of time and the world. And Paris took his spear, and he held it high, and he hurled it through the air straight at Menelaus. Shoo! And that spear whistled through the air and struck Menelaus's shield square in the center, but it was unable to pierce that shield, and it fell to the ground. And Menelaus, wasting no time, stepped forward and lifted his spear high, and in his heart he said, "May this blow which I strike today be for all those in the future who ever wish to welcome a stranger into their homes. All those who welcome a tired traveler into their houses, may they do so without fear that this person will take from them their possessions and their wealth. May I protect all those in the future by this action today." And he let the spear fly. Shoo! It went through the air, and it struck Paris's shield and punched its way through all 5 layers of ox hide and came out the other side. But slowed by its passage, Paris was able to dance to the side, and the spear clattered to the ground. And seeing this, Menelaus rushed straight at him with his sword held high, and he whacked him square on the head. Bam! Just like that. But the bronze helmet took the blow, and the sword shattered into 3 pieces. "O Zeus, you are a cruel god!" cried Menelaus. And as Paris reached for his sword, Menelaus leapt upon him and drove him down into the sand, tackling him there and hitting him with his fist this way and that, so they tussled down in the dirt. And Paris thrashed and kicked, and a moment later Menelaus found that his hand was stuck under the chin strap of Paris's helmet. So he stood up and dragged Paris away, like a lion dragging the carcass of a deer into long grass. And Paris squirmed and writhed, gasping for breath. But Aphrodite saw this, watching from between the air and the sunlight, and she clapped her hands. And as she did so, the chin strap snapped, and the helmet went flying away into the crowd of Greek soldiers. "Ah!" said Menelaus, and he turned, but there was only a cloud of dust there, and he strode into it. "Where is he? Where is he?" And he looked, but he could not find Paris. And soon the dust settled back to the ground, and Menelaus found that he was the only one standing in that dusty circle in the field. He looked this way and that, but nowhere could Paris be found. And then Hector stepped forward, and he stepped into that circle, and he said, "The gods have spoken. They have chosen you, Menelaus, for clearly you are the victor here. So to you shall go Helen, the daughter of Zeus, and all the wealth of your house of Sparta, stolen from you by my brother Paris." And Menelaus raised his fists up into the air and looked out into the limitless and infinite sky, and he gave a great cry of joy and victory. And behind him all the Greek soldiers shouted with joy as well. And a herald left from the Trojan army to return to the city and tell everyone there the news. But not far off there were 2 oak trees, and on a branch of one of these trees there were 2 ravens, their feathers dark as shadows in the corners of the world. And if you'd been standing there beneath that tree, you would have heard these two ravens cackling together, speaking in their raspy, murky, thickety language. But if you happened to be a god, if perhaps you'd happened to have the ears of a god, you would have heard something else, a different kind of music. You would have heard their voices and their words. And one of the ravens said, "Peace? Athena, look at what has happened. Peace has come, and the city of Troy still stands. Paris is still alive. He must be killed, and all his family, their city razed to the ground, leaving ashes and smoke rising into the air." "It's true," said Athena in the shape of a raven. "It's true what you say. But this peace is fragile. It is a cobweb in a corner of a barn. It will not last long, for the minds of men are weak. Watch me." And with these words she flapped her wings, and Athena, in the form of a raven, flew high up into the sky. And she flew over the Greek army, and all the Trojan army as well. And she came down to rest in a thicket of bushes. And a moment later, a human man stepped out of those bushes. Laodicus was his name, Laodicus of Troy. And he walked from those bushes and to the Trojan army. No one saw where he had come from. They hardly noticed him. And he threaded his way through the soldiers talking, laughing, relieved that at last the hard toil of war was over. And Athena, in the form of Laodicus, came to an archer named Pandarus, the greatest of the Trojan archers. And she said, "Look at this. Look at what I see before me, Pandarus. Look, between the two armies, there stands Agamemnon, and beside him his brother Menelaus, defenseless. Their shields are down on the ground. They are not expecting trouble. They think they've won. But look at this huge army they have brought, 1,000 ships brought across the sea. They will not be satisfied with Helen alone. No one brings an army of that size across the sea just for a woman, no matter how beautiful she is. They are here to conquer Troy, our city, to take our magnificent and beautiful city, to plunder all its riches, and take them home across the sea. That is why they are here. They will not be satisfied with this. They say they are at peace, but they lie. I say this. I say cut them down right now with 2 of your sharp arrows. You could do it with your hands and your sharp eyes. Cut down Agamemnon and Menelaus, the leaders of this Greek army. Then they will lose heart. They will not fight with their leaders gone. Do this, and glory shall come to you." "Yes," said Pandarus, "it's true what you say. They aren't here for Helen. They're here for all of Troy. But I will end this here and now." And he reached down and he took an arrow fletched with gray-blue feathers from a heron. And he lifted it up and he fitted it to the bow string, and he pulled the arrow back, and he sighted down the length of the arrow straight at the chest of Menelaus. And then he let the arrow go. Shoo! It went through the air. But Athena was watching, and she blew a kiss which deflected that arrow to the side, so that it did not kill Menelaus, but instead went slashing across the top of his chest just above the armor, and blood spilled down. "My brother," said Agamemnon. And Menelaus staggered back, and even as he did so, Pandarus reached down and picked up another arrow and fitted it to his bowstring and pulled it back and sighted down the length of that arrow straight at Agamemnon. But Agamemnon reached down for his shield. He took hold of that gleaming bronze shield. He lifted it up just in time, and the arrow went glancing off that shield and away. "Those lying Trojans," said Agamemnon. "We've come all the way across the sea, and now, in your moment of victory, you shall die on this shore." "No," said Menelaus. "It is not a bad wound, just a scratch. It looks bad, but I am fine." And as he spoke these words, Teucer, the Greek archer, fitted an arrow to his bow, and he aimed it straight at Pandarus, and he let it fly. But at the last moment Pandarus bent down to pick up another arrow, so that Teucer's arrow went over Pandarus's head and into the chest of another Greek chieftain, and gasping he fell to the ground dead. And a moment later all the soldiers were on their feet, holding their swords and their spears, and they rushed towards each other, and the two armies fell upon each other on the dusty field. And far off in the city of Troy, high up on the Trojan walls, all the women were gathered, and Helen was among them, looking out at the dusty plain, seeing the armies there. "What is happening?" she said. "What is going on?" And an old woman beside her said, "Have no fear, Helen, dear one. Have no fear for Paris, the man you love. He has lost this battle, but he is unharmed. You will find him resting at ease in your house, in this city of Troy." And hearing these words, Helen turned and ran down the streets of Troy and to the house she shared with Paris. And there was such desire in her heart to see her dear Paris alive once more, that she did not turn to see the old woman. How the old woman stepped up into the air and became a white dove, and how that white dove flittered and flew higher and higher away from Troy and up into the sky and was gone. Instead, Helen went racing up the stairs of her house, and she came to the great bedroom she shared with Paris. And there he was, lying at ease on a silken bed, with sunlight golden coming in through the windows. "Oh, my dear," said Helen. "Oh, my dear, are you hurt? Are you all right?" "I am fine," said Paris. "I am fine. I have just awoken from a splendid nap. I had a wild dream of dust and of swords and of knives, but it is over now." "Oh, my dear," she said, "you faced Menelaus, the great king of Mycenae, and you have survived." "It's true," said Paris. "The goddess Aphrodite, she watches over me." "Oh, my love," said Helen. And crying tears of joy, she slipped into bed beside him. And as the two of them kissed, finding again that sweetness which lives inside the bird and the apple on its branch, out on the dusty field the spears flew through the air, and the warriors clashed and shouted and died. And as Paris and Helen slipped out of their clothes, hearing the music of springtime and of summer at its height, out in the dusty field there was only death and blood, soldiers gasping, falling to the ground, their guts torn out by spears, by swords, crying their last cries. And at the end of the day, when Helios, the sun god, had driven his chariot over the edge of the world, bringing darkness to the earth, Paris and Helen lay on that silken bed like spent swimmers on a shore. And the Trojans carried their dead back to the city and burned them there before the great walls. And the Greeks, weeping, carried their dead to the shore and burned their bodies there beside the wild and crashing sea. Gaia, Thank you for listening to this story. I invite you to give some breath to this story. It's a simple thing. You just put some breath into your two hands and then send it out to this story, which comes to us from a long way off. And is it history? Is it a map to states of the soul? Is it just a good story? Well, perhaps it's all three at different times. Love and war. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, has as a husband Hephaestus, the blacksmith god. But secretly, she's in love with Ares, the god of war. And so they are frequently found together in secret, in the myths of the Greeks. Love and war, they have an attraction to each other. These relationships aren't just parts of a story, they also communicate to us something about a vision of the world and how it may work. So we should ponder that. And here we have Helen and Paris enjoying each other's company in Troy while the warriors are dying on the battlefield. In the Mahabharata, the great and beautiful epic of India, a character named Gandhari says, "Whenever you prefer your own children to those of others, then war is near." Oh, harsh, huh? Harsh. Whenever you prefer your own children to other children, then war is near. But how can we not? How can we not care for the ones we love, whether our children or our families? How can we not care for the places in which we live? Have you ever felt that? You move somewhere, it can be a scrawny apartment somewhere that's not so great, but gradually it takes on the feeling of home. Even if you don't like it there, even if it's not where you're supposed to be, it can be comforting. You come home and it's home. It's your toaster. It's your futon on the floor, your cardboard box of dishes and a few books. Or camping, you know that feeling? You go camping and you pick a site from among so many possibilities. By this tree, here we are. And suddenly that's home. Suddenly you have an affection for that place. I don't know if that's your experience, but it is mine. And then you pack up in the morning and it's like, oh, we're saying goodbye to this little tree and these few patches of grass. So Gandhari's words seem harsh, they seem difficult, but they also seem true. And I think of them now in the middle of this story when a war is happening. I think of them now in the world as the Middle East is tearing itself apart, as war exists not just there, but all over the place. In America, right? We have territory we defend, physical territory, ideological territory, cities, this is mine, that is yours, defending my home. Americans are so big on the home in that they have a desperate affinity with the Greeks. Same thing. People who are in these stories, these ancient stories at least, are homeless pretty much, but they value home so much. These Greeks come across the sea and they're the desperate ones. They're the ones pillaging. They're the pirates, right? The Trojans, they're settled. They have a civilization, a beautiful city. Nothing in the Greek world it compares to this. It's a beautiful city. It's like the Greeks have stumbled into Egypt or Mesopotamia. It's like a civilization. And the Trojans have all the delights of home. The Greeks long for home, and they have their palaces, sure, absolutely. But it's like the Middle Ages. They're walled in against intrusion, against chaos of all kinds. Whereas the Trojans are secure. And then these crazy people come across the sea to destroy it all. And why that should be and why that should happen is, well, it is perhaps in some ways the project of this podcast right now to figure that out. And at last we've come to it, after Prometheus on his rock, after the fates, after Mother Earth, after Helen running away with Paris, after Menelaus deciding he can't just let her go. After all those events and many more, we've at last come to it, the ultimate disaster, two armies facing each other, one on sea, one on land. And there's this guy, Protesilaus, who just leaps from the boat. Have you ever felt like him? When I found him in this story, it was a way in for me, because I felt like that. Not that I've ever been in war, but just you're in a situation which is so static, and the forces involved are doing the right thing, quote unquote, but nothing's going to move. And you know you shouldn't do what you're about to do, but you do it. And Protesilaus, he's just the guy, the person who just bursts, who cracks. He's like, I'm jumping out of the boat. I don't care what the prophet says. I'm jumping out of the boat. Wham! And he runs to the shore, puts his foot down, and, of course, he is the first one to die, just as Calchas the seer said would happen. But I kind of love him for that. He's like the three drops, coming spitting out of the cauldron that is bubbling. He breaks the pattern. He breaks the structure there of two armies, land, sea. And there's a prophecy which says if you set foot on the beach first, you'll die. And he hears that. Everybody knows that, and everybody's afraid to move, but he breaks it. And so, he breaks it. And then all kinds of things are possible. Of course, blood and death are possible, but that's the picture there. And then we get Cygnus. So these stories, I'm basically what you got here. The footnotes of this are this. You got me, you got Homer, and you got Ovid, the Roman poet. So those are the three sources of what you just heard, basically. The Trojans and the Greeks there on the beach, and Cygnus, that whole thing, that's from Ovid, again, the Roman poet. Homer does not describe how these armies first meet. And for my part, I'm not a military genius, but it sounds kind of dumb. It sounds like the Greeks are just born to lose right now. The Trojans have the land. They got the high ground. They've got the city. And the Greeks are just coming in their boats. It seems like they're totally at a disadvantage. But, Achilles tips the balance, I guess. And I could have just skipped all this, but I like the story of Cygnus, turning into a swan. That's just great. And I've seen that constellation in Yosemite and elsewhere. It's easy to find. It's part of the Summer Triangle. The Summer Triangle, that's 3 stars, which are pretty much right overhead in the summer if you live in the northern hemisphere. And they are quite bright stars, and they're connected with 3 constellations. The stars are Deneb, Altair, and Vega. And Vega is in the constellation Lyrae, so the lyre. That's Orpheus's lyre up there. And then we've got Altair in the constellation of the Eagle. Up there. And then we've got Cygnus, Deneb, which is Arabic, meaning the tail of the swan. It's a beautiful constellation, just kind of floating, soaring right through the Milky Way up there overhead. So I love that connection, just because I used to see that constellation at night all the time in Yosemite, and now and again, now as well. And there he goes. And again, we have these themes of permanence and ephemerality. Is that the right word? Permanence and brevity, right? And Cygnus gets basically immortal life in a way. He's remembered forever because Zeus puts him in the sky, like the shining stars, which are, as far as we're concerned, pretty close to eternal. We know they're not, but compared to a human life, we're just teacups of wind, and they are like serious granite boulders or something like that. So Cygnus does this crazy thing. He fights all these people. Zeus turns him into a constellation in the sky. So he has this permanence. I like to think of Achilles on the beach at night, seeing those stars overhead. Whether he sees them deeply or whether he just notices them, who knows? But perhaps they're there. And the scene with Achilles on the beach, well, that's basically me telling that story. Homer says that Thetis, the goddess of the sea, who is Achilles' mother, gave him this choice. It described for him that he would have this choice, to have a long and basically ordinary life or a short and glorious one. And he says that, but he never really spells it out as to where and when this conversation took place. So this seemed like a good place to put it in, and so I did. And what motivates Achilles, right? I mean, basically, in today's terms, he wants to be a rock star. He wants fame and glory, all those things. Eternity lives for us mortals in action, he says. By great deeds we are remembered. You immortals, you live forever. You are a part of eternity, but we cannot be eternal. Only by our actions do we take part in what lives forever. And that may sound like, ridiculously heroic, some kind of thing from the past, but I don't know, look around. I mean, I find it all around me these days in movies, in the headlines. People want to do things which last forever. We want fame, right? What's TikTok all about? You want fame, You want to be an influencer, someone who is known, someone who is famous, quote unquote. And is there emptiness at the heart of that? Well, of course. Fame is the cure for loneliness, which is worse than the disease, it has been said, right? But Achilles, sort of brooding loner that he is, he wants that cure. He wants to be famous. He wants glory. He wants to never die. And in this world, at this time, in this story, how you do that is by being a great hero and killing a lot of Trojans. And I say that, and it's easy for us to listen to that and be like, well, wow, what a primitive, barbaric age. And now we're better. Yes, we've got these same urges, but to us, it's TikTok, it's Facebook, it's whatever. It's becoming a famous pop star. It's not killing people, but we should be mindful of that superiority we might feel, that I might feel anyway, because our age is every bit as brutal as the one described in this story. I submit to you. If it is not for you and I listening to this, me making it, you hearing it, well, that's a joyous thing. But it's only a part of the truth. It's not the whole truth. And if we look around, it's not pretty. But peace is possible. And in this story, it's possible. God, isn't it just a drag? They're so close, Oh, man. I mean, it could have been. Hector is just a good guy, They have this duel, and, Paris just vanishes because of Aphrodite, goddess of love. But Hector's like, look, you won. Is that what he wants? Maybe so. And it's going to be peace, right? Everything's cool. It's all right. But not. And why not? Because of these two ravens on the branch of an oak tree. I kind of love that detail. It reminds me of the fairy tale, the Faithful Johannes, it's called. It's a Grimm's fairy tale where there's two ravens who are muttering together on the bow of a ship. And a servant, I believe it is, overhears what they're saying and learns some things that he needs to know. And it's just great to have these gods and goddesses, which too often are like supermodels just living in the sky in their amazing hotel, to have them turn into ravens. And in fact, in the Iliad, they do turn into different animals of all kinds, ravens and then other animals as well. So anyway, I like that detail. Athena and Hera as ravens. And they're the ones who want Troy destroyed, of course, because Paris chose Aphrodite as the most beautiful of them all, and Athena and Hera as not beautiful or less beautiful. Maybe part of what I love about this is that they are sort of ravens. It's sort of like all the beautiful goddess stuff that they look like usually. That's fake. And really, they're monsters. Well, is a raven a monster? No, but well, you know what I mean. Really, at heart, they are ravens. They feed on the dead. Whoa. And of course, there's the battle goddess of Ireland, which I am about to remember. Starts with M, the Morrigan, I believe her name is. And yeah, so it's suddenly Athena and Hera. It's like they're showing their true colors, we might say. It's like, yeah, they're supposed to be these, lovely, wise, strategic goddesses, Athena in particular, wisdom, strategy. But in fact, they are birds of prey. In fact, they are hunched over ravens cackling in a tree. So though it is a disguise, it's a disguise which seems true, which seems to reveal who they might really be in the world, if it can be said by us to understand what a god or a goddess is at any time. And so she, talks to Pandarus, and all hell breaks loose, as we might say. And incidentally, we get the word pander from this moment, from the name Pandarus. Pander, which means, let me be exact here. I'm looking at the dictionary. Here we go. Someone who caters to or exploits the weaknesses of others. So Athena is exploiting the weaknesses of Pandarus, who wants fame and glory, just like all the others in this story, like most of the others in this story. And she's exploiting that to get what she wants, which is to keep the war going and to destroy the city of Troy. So it's worth considering how capable of choice we actually are. As I've said before, and is probably clear to you, we like to think we've got all the choice possible. We can choose our fates. We can choose the manner of our death. We can choose when we die. I mean, the facts show us that we can't, but that's something we aspire to with all our Western technology, with all our Western medicine. But this story is a world in which humans are subject to powers they do not understand. There's a great line from a poem by W.H. Auden, A-U-D-E-N, and the line is, "We are lived by powers we pretend to understand." We are lived by powers we pretend to understand. We think we are in charge. We think we can control our path through the world. It's perhaps a useful illusion. But, well, this story would say it's an illusion. And we think of that in a bad way, as in destructions and fires, illnesses, all those things. But the thing is, the gods bring us good things as well. Our good ideas are also those inspired in us by the gods. They're inspired by the gods. So it's not just when sickness comes to you. It's not just when bad impulses come to you to whatever, to lie, to steal, etc. It's also the good stuff. When we feel love, that's because Aphrodite is there with us. When we feel anger, that's because Ares is there with us. When we feel cool and collected and strategic and thinking ahead, that's because Athena is there with us. So these gods live as powers in the world, and we experience them as moods, experience them as our own capacities. When we are physically strong, we are like Heracles. When we are singing, when we are magical, we are like Orpheus. Or Apollo, perhaps. So that's the way to relate to these gods and goddesses. That's the way to connect us to them. And why should we do that? Well, it gives us a window. It gives us a window into something eternal. It reminds us, it reassures us that what we feel is not simply our anger, but it is a manifestation of a god. It's a visitation by a god. It's not that we become these gods, but it's just this is one way in which they are expressed. Athena lives as this sort of superhero goddess being, who's anthropomorphic and beautiful and harsh, but she is also the owl. She is also a mood which comes over us of strategy and insight and planning. So to do this, why should we do this at all, right? Well, it's a way to connect us with the divine, to see the divine in our own lives. And it connects us with other people, others in the past, in the future, in the present, others who are feeling the same mood. When you're together with others who are angry or in love or planning, whatever, then those gods are in the room. Athena's in the room, hopefully, at the planning meeting, at the football game. You're feeling Aries, right? Valentine's Day, I don't know. So these gods manifest in our lives in this way. They are qualities, they are moods. That's a way to think about this. That's a way to perceive these divine powers as not just cartoons and not just as characters in something, but as divine presences which visit us and then depart. To do so, well, it makes life a little less lonely. And so me sitting here talking like this, talking about the story, someone who is at risk of trying to explain the story, I'm at risk of being too much under the spell of Apollo. Apollo, who, let's face it, kind of stole things from other gods, stole the lyre. Well, it was a deal, but he stole the lyre from Hermes, right? Apollo, who lives on high and works from a distance. Yeah, he loves that. That's why the arrow is his weapon, the bow and the arrow, because you can kill from a distance. So when I'm recording this podcast, that's important information for me because it tells me I'm at risk of being too far from this story and just giving you things as if I'm some, genius on a hill or in his attic, at least in this case. And in fact, I should be subject to this story. In fact, I am subject to it. In fact, if I want transformation, if I want truly to be affected by this story, I need to go down and leave the world of Apollo and enter something else. Be more like Hephaestus, perhaps. Be more something subject to this story, the power of this story. But that's a vulnerable place to be, especially when there's a microphone running here. But I'm just saying, these are how the powers of these gods are in our lives. And, I've tried to do that work off camera, recording, thinking about these stories, living through them. And I'm not done with that. I hope you're not done with that either. I hope you can find your way through this story and find it in you. And through this story, we are connected to each other, to the past, to the future, and to these immortal forces. Call them gods, call them goddesses, call them what you will. So thinking of that, I want to remember the ring popping out of that helmet into the grass, and Odysseus picking it up. I want to remember that spear clattering across the deck of the ship. I want to remember the wine being poured down from a goblet by Priam into the earth. The grateful earth. I want to remember the hill, the burial mound of the warrior queen, the Amazon warrior queen. I want to remember the river Scamander, through which the army came running. And now the army is inside Troy, and now the Greek army is on the shore, and that river is still flowing. And I think of the stars shining down into it. I think of Cygnus, a constellation now. I think of Thetis in the depths of the sea, happy in her freedom. I think of Priam, the old king, asleep in Troy beside his wife, Hecuba. I think of all those ships on the beach, their bows pointed out towards the sea, so they can make an easy escape. I think of the eyes painted on their bows, each ship with a soul. The water slapping against those hulls. and then dying out in the sand, and then sinking back into itself, into the sea. Thank you for listening to this podcast. There are more stories on my website, jayleeming.com, JAYLEEMING.com. And if you are able to support this podcast, please do so. It's what keeps things running. It's what keeps these horses in good shape, in fine fettle. You can support this podcast through Patreon, patreon.com/storyjl. And that's a great help to me. It allows me to focus on these larger projects like the Iliad. That also gets you free admission to online performances of stories, which I do quite often as it happens. Thank you for joining me, and take care.